Hello everyone, today we'll explore a deeply emotional story. James just experienced the happiest moment of his life when he proposed to Diep, but that joy was quickly replaced by pain when Diep received the devastating news from the doctor: she has cancer. Will love be strong enough to help them overcome this challenge? Let's follow this touching story together. James had just experienced the sweetest moment of his life when he successfully proposed to Diep, but that joy didn't last long when Diep found out she had cancer. Will she be able to overcome this illness with James' care and encouragement? Will the chemotherapy and radiation weaken her resolve? How will the love between James and Diep help them face every obstacle and find the strength to keep fighting? Where will their story go, with one side filled with newly blossoming happiness, while the other is filled with an overwhelming pain? If you want to continue following this emotional journey, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to receive our latest videos. Thank you for watching. James sat next to Diep's hospital bed, his heart overflowing with happiness after the meaningful proposal he had waited so long for. This feeling was indescribable, like a beautiful dream finally coming true. He held Diep's hand tightly, feeling each of her heartbeats, and in the quiet atmosphere of the hospital, everything seemed to stop, leaving only their love. "I love you so much," James whispered, his eyes sparkling with joy and love. Diep, though lying on the hospital bed, still had a gentle glow in her eyes. She smiled lightly, her face bearing the marks of the struggle she had gone through, but her gaze was still warm and full of affection. "I love you too," she replied softly, her voice gentle, yet tinged with some worry. Everything seemed perfect in that moment, happiness filling the air, but it was only a fleeting moment. Just as James was lost in that happiness, the door to the room suddenly opened, and a wave of coldness swept into the warm space. The doctor walked in, his face serious, unlike any other time. James suddenly felt a sense of unease. He looked at the doctor with a vague feeling, as if he knew something was wrong. The doctor looked at Diep and then turned to James, his tone slow and heavy. "Diep's test results are in, and I'm very sorry to inform you that there are signs of cancer." Those words hit James like a thunderbolt, leaving him stunned. It felt as though everything around him suddenly crumbled, like a dark cloud had covered the sky in his mind. He looked at Diep, the woman he loved, the woman he had just proposed to, and now she was facing an unimaginable challenge. Are you sure?" James asked, his voice choking, unable to believe what he had just heard. Diep gently moved, her delicate hands still tightly gripping James's, but her eyes were full of anxiety. She looked at him, her eyes no longer shining with brightness but filled with a silent sorrow. "I'm fine, James. I'll be okay," she smiled, but that smile couldn't hide the worry in her heart. She didn't want him to see the fear in her eyes, but how could she hide it when everything suddenly seemed so uncertain? James couldn't say anything more, just feeling a tightening pain in his chest. He sat there, still holding her hand, but there was nothing else he could do but feel her breathing. He wanted to tell her that everything would be fine, that they would get through this together, but deep down, He couldn't shake the fear and helplessness. The doctor continued explaining Diep's condition, saying that the cancer had been detected in its early stages and there was still a chance for treatment, but those words couldn't ease his fear. "We'll fight, right?" James whispered, his voice trembling. "I'll fight, for you, for us," Diep replied, her gaze resolute but still showing the vulnerability she couldn't hide. Her words were gentle, yet carried a strength beyond imagination. James looked into her eyes, and in that moment, he could feel the strength of her love, but the fear still lingered. They sat in silence, no one speaking another word. In the hospital room, the only sound was their steady breathing, but with each breath, there was so much anxiety, hope, and determination. James didn't know what the future would hold, but he knew that no matter what happened, he would never leave Diep. His love for her was the most certain thing, and with that love, he would face every challenge with her, no matter how difficult the path ahead. They held each other's hands tightly, without needing to say anything more, because in their eyes, there was a silent promise, they would always be together, no matter the storm. Things could change, but their love would be the strength to overcome everything. After the doctor left, the atmosphere in the room became heavier than ever. James remained sitting beside Diep's hospital bed, his hand tightly holding hers, feeling each of her heartbeats. He looked into her eyes, unsure of what to say, silently wiping away his tears, trying not to let her see his weakness. He didn't want her to feel additional pressure, nor did he want her to worry about his emotions right now. Diep, despite hearing the doctor's words about her condition, still tried to maintain her composure. She knew exactly how serious her illness was, but what hurt her the most was the worry she felt for James. She knew how deeply he loved her, and that made her feel guilty. "You won't leave me, right?" Diep asked softly, her eyes dimming with tears but still full of determination. "I will never leave you, Diep." "I promise," James replied, his voice firm. "No matter what happens, I will always be by your side, never leaving you." He squeezed her hand tighter, as if trying to transfer a little bit of strength, hope. The next day, Diep began her treatment journey. The chemotherapy sessions were long, and her body gradually became weaker, her skin pale, her hair falling out. Each time she went to the hospital, James went with her, always by her side like a silent figure, yet his presence was a source of great comfort for her. He knew that no matter how much pain she was in, he couldn't let her feel alone on this journey. In the early days of treatment, Diep often felt exhausted. The fatigue and nausea from the chemotherapy made her not want to do anything. On the days when she lay in bed, feeling like giving up, she would look into James' eyes, and he would give her the strength to push through. He was always there, gazing at her with love and encouragement. "You're the strongest person I know," James would often say. "I believe you'll get through this." There were times when Diep felt like she couldn't go on anymore. Her body was too tired, and her mind was no longer clear. But on those late nights, when she was alone in the dark, she would think about James, think about the promises he had made. "I will always be by your side," he had said. And those words became the greatest source of motivation for her throughout this journey. Gradually, Diep's strength began to shine through. She was no longer just a tired, weak patient in the hospital, but a woman fighting relentlessly for herself and for James. She knew that life could change in an instant, but her love and inner strength would help her overcome all difficulties. Every morning when she woke up and saw James sitting beside her, she found new motivation to keep fighting. As time passed, each treatment session became a new challenge. Each time she stood up from the hospital bed, each difficult step, she felt the love and unwavering support from James. He never let her feel alone. "I love you, Diep," James would often say. "No matter what, I'll always be the first one beside you, walking through this with you." Those words were like a mental boost, making her feel strong enough to keep going. Then, one day, after a long series of exhausting treatment sessions, the doctor announced that Diep's condition was showing signs of improvement. The cancerous cells in her body were no longer growing as quickly as before, and she had entered the recovery phase. Although there was still much to be done, the doctor confirmed that her chances of living healthily were much higher now. "You did it, Diep," James whispered, his eyes lighting up with joy. "You fought with all your might, and now we have hope." He hugged her tightly, as if he wanted to transfer all the positive energy into her body. Diep smiled, even though her body was still weak, but her heart was filled with joy and hope. "We did it, James. Thank you for always being by my side." These words were not only gratitude but also a promise that no matter what life brought their way, they would always fight together, never giving up. And from then on, Diep's treatment journey was no longer a solitary battle. It became a journey of love, strength, and belief in a brighter future. Each passing day, she felt stronger, and with James by her side, she believed that nothing was impossible to overcome. Their love had become the strongest force, helping both of them move forward in this life, even though many challenges still lay ahead. After the chemotherapy sessions, Diep's body had still not fully recovered. Although her condition had improved somewhat, the side effects from the treatment left her feeling exhausted. James never left her side. He remained by her, taking care of her every day, ensuring she felt loved and supported during this difficult time. Each day, he cared for her diligently, from helping her eat to comforting her when the fatigue became too much. He was not only her partner but also a loving husband who took care of her every moment. One morning, when Diep woke up after a restless night, James was already sitting by her bed, gently brushing her hair. "Good morning, my love," he smiled softly, his eyes full of affection. Diep smiled faintly, though her body still felt heavy, but her heart warmed at the sight of him. As long as James was there by her side, the exhaustion seemed to fade a little. James always prepared everything with great care. He knew exactly what Diep needed and was always ready to provide it without a word of complaint. Every meal, even if it was something simple, he made sure it was prepared with love and care, gently encouraging her to eat. Eat a little more. The doctor said you need to stay strong to recover faster, James would kindly remind her, without pressuring her, just hoping she could eat a bit more to regain her strength. There were moments when Diep felt like she couldn't go on anymore. Her body was drained, and her mind was clouded. But every time she looked into James's eyes, she found the strength to keep going. He wasn't just her husband, he was her constant companion, always patient, always reminding her that they would face this together. On the afternoons when Diep had to lie in bed due to the pain from radiation therapy, James would sit beside her, reading her books she loved. He knew she couldn't take in too much information, but just hearing his voice brought her peace. "I'm going to tell you a funny story, it'll make you laugh." James would start telling stories about adventures he had when he was younger, sometimes sharing humorous memories to help her forget the pain. One day, when she was feeling especially weak, James sat by the bed, holding her hand, his voice low and comforting. "Diep, I know you're exhausted, but I believe in you. You're the strongest person I've ever known. I'll always be here, by your side." His words were a silent promise, and they became the source of strength that Diep needed to continue. She could feel the depth of his love, not just in his words but also in his actions. He took care of her like a mother, protected her like a loving husband, and did everything to make her feel loved, safe, and never alone. Every evening, as the lights in the hospital room dimmed, James would sit beside her, adjusting the blankets to make sure she was warm, and then kiss her forehead gently before going to sleep. "Good night, my love. You'll be okay," he whispered softly, his voice full of tenderness. Diep could feel the warmth in his words, and in that moment, she felt at peace. She knew that no matter what life threw their way, with James's love, she would always have the strength to get through. James was not just the man who loved her, but also a wonderful companion who always knew how to care for her, comfort her, and inspire her. Even in the moments when she felt the weakest, he remained strong, a steady support for her. And it was that love, the unconditional love James had for Diep, that became the greatest motivation for her to continue fighting, never giving up, no matter how difficult the journey. Their journey was a testament to a love that was sincere, full of sacrifice and perseverance. James and Diep were not just a married couple, but warriors in their battle with illness, building faith in life and eternal love together. And in those moments, with every step Diep took, James knew that they would always be by each other's side, facing every challenge together. The story of James and Diep truly left a deep impression on me. It is not just a story about love, but also a journey full of challenges and sacrifices. The sweet moments when James proposed to Diep were filled with happiness and joy, but in an instant, all of that was replaced by pain and helplessness when Diep discovered she had cancer. This made me realize more clearly the fragility of life and the power of love. James's love for Diep was an invaluable source of encouragement during those difficult times. He was not only a husband but also a strong companion, always by her side during each painful treatment session. Through this story, I realized that true love is not just about joy and happiness, but also about sacrifice, patience, and determination to face any challenges. It is a story of courage, strength, and belief in a brighter future.